Flipping through the pages of national dailies, you'll be amazed at the rate at which suicides occur in our country today. The situation has moved from once-in-a-while blip to a very disturbing trend. It is not restricted to any age bracket, as both the young and the old are taking their own lives. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, 1 in 4 Nigerians suffer from one sort of mental illness. Suicide is a major public health challenge, with more than 700,000 deaths recorded each year globally. According to the World Health Organization, in Nigeria, the age standardized suicide rate was 6.9 per 100,000 population in 2019 across both sexes. However, male suicide rates were higher at 10.1 per 100,000 population. With the rate of suicide attempts soaring daily, collective effort is required to change the narrative nationally and internationally by working together to reduce stigma, increase support, and create a safer environment for those struggling with mental health issues. This is why a national conference on suicide prevention is being organized by the Nigeria Suicide Advocacy Working Group. The target is to change the narrative on suicide. This is our focus on Nigeria today. Welcome to the program. I am Ikaria Clinton. Now, joining us for the conversation is Professor Taiwo Lateef Sheikh. He is the Professor of Psychiatry at Ahmadu Bello University and the convener, National Suicide Prevention Conference. You're welcome to Nigeria today.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Also with us for the conversation is Professor Emmanuel Abikoye. He's the President, Nigeria Association of Clinical Psychology. You're welcome to Nigeria today.
Thank you very much, Ukeria, for having me.
We also have a third guest, Professor Jibril Abdul Malik. He is the founder, Asido Foundation, and also a consultant psychiatrist at University College Hospital, Ibadan. You're welcome to Nigeria today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I'll start with you, Professor Taiwo Lateef. You are the convener of this, conference, Suicide Prevention Conference. Talk to us about this conference. Why the conference?
Thank you very much. It's important that people know what we are doing. The conference is a public conference for sharing knowledge regarding suicide prevention and, very importantly, the decriminalization of attempted suicide in Nigeria, in Africa, and globally. You have said it in the introduction, suicide has become a crisis globally and more so in the low and medium income countries. You've given us some statistics, but I will tell you to break it down. In Nigeria, based on that 6.9 by 100,000 population across age groups that die of suicide, not attempt, 15,000 Nigerians die of suicide every year across all age groups, which is higher than deaths from banditry, terrorism, flood, put anyone you think of. But it's so silent, people don't discuss it because of the stigma. This conference is essentially to highlight the crisis point of suicide in Nigeria, to change the way we see suicide and attempted suicide, to decriminalize suicide attempt, which we consider to be a barrier for help seeking and help giving for those who try to die by suicide. It tries to stop the act, but it does not address the thoughts, neither does it address the social determinants of suicide, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. So this conference is about sharing knowledge on best practices on how to prevent suicide. We are bringing people all over the world to Abuja, Nigeria, to discuss the best practices globally on how to prevent suicide, how it was done yesterday, how it's been done today, and how it will be done in future, including the use of AI, artificial intelligence, in the prevention of suicide. These are the things we are going to be considering. And we are also going to look at the cultural narratives the religious narratives about suicide, not only in Nigeria, but we also want to share experiences across the world. And finally, we also want to discuss the leadership role that the Federal Ministry of Health has taken regarding suicide prevention in Nigeria by developing the National Suicide Prevention Strategic Framework, which is a commitment of the Federal Ministry of Health to the people of Nigeria, understanding the magnitude of the problems of suicide in this country. They have taken that lead, and we are implementing it for them.
Okay, I'll come back to the issue of decriminalization later, but talk to us, Professor Emmanuel. Tell us about your work as advocates of suicide prevention.
Well, thank you very much. Mainly, our work on advocacy regarding suicide prevention is to drive home the point that suicide is preventable. Evidence has shown that we can prevent it, and then by criminalizing suicide, that tends to run contrary to the idea of prevention, because decriminalization is strongly linked to prevention. So suicide is not something that happens spontaneously. Most of the times, there are issues that people are grappling with. There are serious underlying issues. So when you don't listen to people, when people are not allowed to put across these issues, they are not listened to, then it may culminate into suicide ultimately. So like I said, it's not something that happens overnight. Most of the time people have, is a process starting from ideation, people thinking about it, thinking about the way to do it. And most of the times they discuss this with loved ones or people around them. But in most cases, they are never taken seriously until it happens eventually. And to worsen it all, when an individual attempted suicide and fails, and then he or she is tried and possibly convicted, the big question is, have we solved the problem? The answer is no. Rather, you are compounding the problem when you have criminalized the person, because criminalizing an individual comes with a lot of baggage additional to what the person was going through initially. So you are adding to the person's problem. And that's why we are saying that in as much as we are not encouraging people to take their own life or to attempt to take their own lives, we are saying that instead of sweeping the underlying issues under the carpet, let's hear these people, let's help them. Suicide is a mental health issue and not a criminal issue. The people involved are not criminals. They are suffering. There are underlying issues.
Now that's where the decriminalization comes in.
Exactly.
Okay.
So they should not be seen as criminals. Rather, they are people who need help. They need to be helped. But unfortunately, we are not doing that so far with criminalization that is presently in place. And as long as we have that in place, unfortunately, it's not going to work. And that's why the rates continue to soar exponentially across the globe, not just in Nigeria, but particularly in Nigeria. If criminalizing it has worked, we will not be here where we are today. So it shows that it has not worked, and it's not going to work, because criminalizing it merely means that you are sweeping the main issues under the, and that will not help the matter at all.
Thank you very much. Now, Professor Jibril Abdulmalik, back in the days, people would say suicide is not a Nigerian thing; it's a foreign thing. It's not something that a Nigerian will want to relate with. But now we see that the figures are soaring. Like Professor Taiwo rightly mentioned, 15,000. He said 15,000 yearly.
15,000 deaths
every year in Nigeria.
Yes.
In Nigeria alone. No, so tell us, what are some of the issues that are leading to this increase in suicidal, tendencies in Nigeria?
Right. Thank you so much. And firstly, let me start by saying that it is not correct, as people say, to say that it's not in our culture. For instance, if we remember the popular novel Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, how did Okonkwo die? He died by suicide to prevent the shame of having killed his own son, Ikemefuna. right? And then in Yoruba mythology, they talk about Shango, the god of thunder. He also lost face and eventually took his own life, according to Yoruba mythology. So you find that there are cultural myths and stories that give the lie to the general perception that it's not in our culture, it's been there. And even in biblical times, Samson, ended up taking his own life to kill the enemies in the temple. And so you find, therefore, that this has been an age-long issue. However, why is it becoming more prominent now? Why are the figures soaring? To address this, I want us to firstly recognize that, one, we have lost the very communal sense of cohabitation that we had previously. We had very strong community ties previously. Every child can go and play on the street, sleep in another compound. In the evening, the mothers will go around and be looking for where their children are, And then if you do something wrong on the street, anybody can correct you. It takes a village to raise a child. But now every house has its high fence. You don't know who your neighbors are. And we also had lots of extended family living with us growing up, cousins, relatives. It was a large, and that gave more cohesion. As people are growing older, the house is still full and so on. But now everybody is their nuclear family alone, and then parents are too busy hustling. Daddy and mommy have gone out very early, they come back late, the children are left to their devices to play video game and PlayStation. No human interaction. Many individuals have hundreds, if not thousands of friends on social media, but in real life, no real relationship. So there is that loss of communal cohesion over time. That's number one. Number two is also the fact that there are increasing stressors, especially for young people. Before, if somebody makes fun of you in the school, it's just those in your class that will know. But now they can do cyberbullying. Every time you go online, you will see it. Many other people would like the comments they are using to abuse you. And so it makes you feel more terrible and so on. And then some people will go to Sheraton, they are just passing by, they'll take a picture and say, oh, I'm living the life of, I'm enjoying life. And other people will see that picture and say, oh, this person is enjoying in Sheraton. Me, I have not gone to Sheraton. So there's a lot of comparison, negative comparison, online bullying that is unrealistic, make-believe, fake lives, but it puts a lot of pressure, especially on young people. So we need to be aware of that. And then we also have increasing awareness. Before, if somebody in Sokoto, for instance, ended up taking his life via suicide, only those in Sokoto will hear. But now, because of social media, within 1 hour, somebody in the US can call and say, oh, did you hear what happened in Sokoto? So I think that is also making us more aware of what is going on. And so we are also becoming more aware of the problem. And of course, we also are aware that the global economy is stressful, not just the Nigerian economy. Globally, economies are in recession. There's a lot of psychosocial, economic stress, and so on. So all of these difficulties, I think, are contributing to the increasing rates we are seeing today.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Jibril. Now, back to you, Professor Taiwo. I'm so blessed with a lot of professors here in the studio tonight. Now, Professor Taiwo, now talk to us. What are some of the common, suicidal behavior? Some of the signs, we know before it happens, like Professor Emmanuel rightly said earlier on. He said it's not just, it doesn't just happen, it happens over a period of time. The thoughts have been there. So what are some of the signs that one can, notice and, and call for help?
Yes, just like you said, suicide is most often not spontaneous. It starts with thoughts. Ideas that leads to thoughts that become so intrusive that gets one so overwhelmed that you cannot push it aside, and it keeps knocking and knocking, and you start thinking of how to do it, when to do it. You start making plans. You start, showing evidence that you bidding people goodbye. You talking to people about life after now. But the most important thing is that suicide starts with some behavioral change, and we cannot really separate suicide from mental health. Whatever bombards you mentally, that strains you, is likely going to push you to the brink of wanting to end it. People who die of suicide, really, they don't intend to die in terms of leaving the world to die. They intend to exit their problem. So where people don't find any other ways of exiting the problem, they feel that leaving the world will end the problem. It will reduce the suffering of other people. So by the time you see someone, a young man or an adult, who is passing through very difficult times, and he starts becoming reclusive, he's not mixing with people, he's talking to self. In fact, I read a book that somebody who survived suicide wrote, that when you realize that you are only talking to yourself and you are no longer talking to other people, then suicide is knocking on your door. So he stops talking to people, or she stops talking to people, is reclusive, is no longer doing things that he does normally, things that's supposed to bring, joy, some happiness, some satisfaction. He's no longer interested in those things. Loss of interest in pleasurable things. Is more, looking at self-blame, feeling guilty for things that you didn't do. The mood usually swings to mood of lack of happiness. Even if something that's supposed to make you happy is happening, you cannot stimulate your own happiness. So you look at negative aspects of things that are happening. Even if they say you win a lot of money, you will now start thinking that, what if armed robber comes and attack me, instead of celebrating the money that you have won.
I'll have to stop you here, Professor Taiwo. We'll take a short break and we'll listen to some Nigerians on this issue of, suicide, the rate of suicide, and of course the prevention. Don't go away.
They have children. They cannot afford to pay their children's school fees. They cannot afford to pay their house rent and some other things like that. So when you think it and see that maybe there's no way, and things are not easy for some of those people, so they can easily commit suicide.
Well, if you think of suicide now, mostly is among family, maybe the inability for the head of the house to provide for his family. There's this pressure that comes in the family lines.
Lack of money can be a cause for it, and pressure. Pressure from where? Maybe family pressure, and demands from your spouse. So with the current situation, you have no hope, no job. If even the school say finish school, no job. That's the another thing. No.
Welcome back. In case you're just joining us, this is Nigeria Today, and we're talking about the issues surrounding suicide and its, of course, prevention. And I have with me 3 professors here in the studio. Now, Professor Jubril, I'll start with you on that. Earlier on, Professor Taiwo talked about people being withdrawn from the people around them, sometimes talking to themselves. And oftentimes when we see people talking to themselves, we say this person has gone kind of nuts, has gone wacko, and some family members wouldn't want to talk about it, And out there, some Nigerians are also mentioning some of the issues that could lead to these issues. So talk to us about how to, deal with some, things around mental health issues, people being withdrawn. Talk to us about it a little bit.
Right. Thank you very much. Now, what's important is that I would want us to look at it this way. The World Health Organization, WHO, defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. So what it means is health is like a stool that has 3 legs. One leg is physical health, another leg is mental health, and the third leg is social. Most of us, when we say we are going for health checkup, we mean we are going for physical checkup. And there is no exam where you will score 33% and you will pass. Because one leg out of 3 is 33.3%. There is no exam where you score 33.3% out of 100% and you will pass. If we want to be healthy, we need to take care of our physical, our mental, our social well-being together, so that we can become holistically healthy according to WHO. So when we talk about mental health, the common mistake people make is once they hear mental, say they immediately say is mad, is weary, maukachi, you know, and so on. But that is very wrong. Mental well-being, everybody, if you have a brain, you have mental health, and you should promote your mental health, right? Mental illness itself is a spectrum. Some can be mild, like anxiety, like depression. It is when it is not treated that it becomes severe. That is when it can lead to suicidal thoughts. So the best thing we need to understand for all of us as Nigerians is that we all have mental health. We all should be our brother's keeper. Let us be friendly with one another. Let us be kind with one another, with our family members, with our spouses, with colleagues at work, and so on. So if you do all of that, you promote their mental health. And then if you see any sign that something is not going right, immediately do not hesitate. Encourage them to see a mental health professional. Go to hospital, talk to a mental health professional, maybe a psychiatric nurse, a clinical psychologist, a psychiatrist. See a mental health professional so that they can guide you and intervene quickly before it goes out of hand and becomes a severe case. So that is my recommendation.
Okay. Now, thank you very much, Professor Jibril. Now, Professor Emmanuel, Professor Jibril raised a very important point that is germane to this conversation, talking about visiting a professional when you sense something isn't right with you, or even go for a routine check. I once walked into a psychiatric hospital. I was going through one thing or the other, and I just needed to talk to a psychiatrist. I met one of the nurses there. She looked at me and said, "What do you want?" And I told her I want to see a psychiatric doctor. And she looked at me and said, "Is there anything wrong with you?" She started asking me some kind of questions, and I was giving her answers. And she looked at me and said, "You are okay. You should just go to the normal other hospitals." So that brings me to the next question: how can we, encourage people to, how can we prevent this issue of suicide? Also, encourage people to go out there to seek for help. It doesn't mean that you should break down entirely, maybe be tired before you go to professionals.
Thank you very much for that, and I'm happy you shared your personal experience, and that's the experience of many Nigerians, many individuals, not only Nigerians, even globally. Most of the times, what people need is somebody to sit down with and talk to. From what we saw a while ago, now people gave their various reasons why people commit suicide, but those reasons may not be entirely correct. Of course, it's true when people are under too much pressure, when they can't do this, they cannot do that, those things might precipitate suicide. But you will agree with me that if it is due to lack of money or all those pressures that make people commit suicide, we probably will not be here today. So it's not just those things. Is a combination of several factors. Prof mentioned there are biological factors.
Okay.
Brain chemistry. It's possible that neurotransmitter imbalances and stuff like that. Then coupled with psychological and social, like Professor
Thank you very
mentioned.
much. Thank you very much, Professor Emmanuel. I'll have to stop you there so that Professor Taiwo will just tell us a little bit about the conference, what day we are going to have this conference, just less than 30 seconds.
The conference is taking place on the 10th of October, on a Thursday, 10th of October 2024, at Nikon Luxury Hotel here in Abuja. It's at 12 o'clock noon. The conference will start. It's a hybrid conference. We have physical attendees and virtual attendees all over the world that will be part of that conference.
Thank you very much. That was Professor Taiwo Lateef Sheikh. He's a professor of psychiatry at Ahmadu Bello University and the convener of the National Suicide Prevention Conference. Thank you so much for coming on the program. And also Professor Emmanuel Abikoye is the president, Nigeria Association of Clinical Psychology. Thank you so much for your contributions.
Thank you for having
and
me.
Also we had Professor Jubril Abdul Malik, founder Asido Foundation, and also a consultant psychiatrist at University College Hospital, Ibadan. Thank you so much for your time and your contribution.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for being part of the program. I am your carrier, Clinton. Goodbye.